Welcome to this lecture about interest rates and the valuation of bonds. Lots of people invest in bonds or bond funds in their retirement accounts. Investors in bonds need to understand what factors determine changes in bond prices. For example, if you decide to invest your money in U.S. Treasury bonds, you face a core set of bond risks. If you're holding the bonds to maturity, the risks faced are mostly about inflation, the likelihood that the promised repayments on the bond won't buy you as much consumption in the future as it does today. Here's how inflation has affected the value of $1 over 30-year periods beginning in each year. So as a bond investor, you might get lucky and experience the 30-year period following 1966. That is from 1966 to 1996, when inflation only eroded the value of fixed payments by around 20%. But you might get unlucky and experience a period like 1920 to 1950, where, in addition to many other serious problems in the world, there was lots of inflation, and the spending power of promised nominal dollars declined by 80%. Bond yields in a market setting will compensate for expected inflation, but the risk is that inflation might be greater than expected. And the luckiest state of the world for bond investors is one where there is deflation, an increase in the purchasing power of a dollar. Now, if you aren't holding bonds to maturity, you also face interest rate risk, the possibility that the market will discount the bond's promised payments at higher rates at the very time when you want to sell the bond. So suppose you buy a zero-coupon bond with 10 years to maturity. If a year goes by and the yield on the bond has fallen, its price will be higher than it was to start. Suppose another year goes by, and that by this time the yield has risen beyond its original level. That means the price will be lower than its original level, and the price might continue to fluctuate. So if you want to sell the bond during this time, you face this interest rate risk. As the bond gets close to maturity, the price will converge to the face value, and the interest rate risk is reduced. So if you want to consume the proceeds of the bond after holding it to maturity, then the interest rates do not matter to you. But what if at maturity you were planning to reinvest the funds, not spend them? If you want to reinvest the funds, having low interest rates at that point is actually bad for you, and having high rates is good. That rate risk at the reinvestment horizon is reinvestment risk, and is actually the opposite of the interest rate risk you experience if you want to sell before maturity. So if your consumption horizon is shorter than the bond's maturity, you would be worried about rates possibly going higher. If your consumption horizon is longer than the bond's maturity, you'd be worried about rates possibly going lower. In sum, with government bonds, investors can usually get better returns than just cash. But as with every other instrument that enables the possibility of a return higher than a risk-free rate, there are risks involved. In this lecture, we'll aim to understand the risk and return trade-offs to investing in government bonds.